Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host, and we're back with another innovator interview. Today we're going to talk about the homeless, particularly a project in San Francisco that is really fascinating. I want to apologize first, folks. I am still suffering from COVID, and if I sound a little COVID brain today, I apologize. Discussions about the plight of the homeless usually completely ignore the issue of sustainability, and there are certainly many more pressing concerns to be addressed when someone's in crisis. Our guest today, Zac Clark, who's a student at the University of San Francisco, has started the HomeMore Project, and he's developed a comprehensive approach to helping the more than 10,000 homeless people in San Francisco escape from living on the street. The project includes a novel solar-powered backpack made of recycled plastic called the Makeshift Traveler, which he describes as a temporary form of aid that can help keep the individual connected to society, family, and services. The Makeshift Traveler provides a solar-powered battery and charging ports for devices that can potentially connect the homeless person to job opportunities. Using recycled materials makes this interesting in a lot of ways, but as we've talked about many times on the show, there's another element of this discussion that I think is important to bring to bear. And that is that there are millions of dollars worth of recyclables scattered across many cities. And the digital features of the Makeshift Traveler could connect homeless people looking for a living to ways to monetize all that waste. And that might be an interesting first step in their journey out of homelessness. So the Makeshift Traveler is in the prototype phase, and we're going to want to find out a lot more about that. Zac, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
Well, I wish I was doing better. Your project, which, by the way, is at the HomeMoreProject.org. That's the HomeMore Project, all one word, no dashes, .org. Tell us, first off, you're a student at the University of San Francisco. How did you start the HomeMore program, and what drove you to this goal?
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting backstory. I moved to San Francisco for school, actually having grown up in Atlanta, Georgia. And I came to San Francisco because of the various opportunities with work post-graduating in San Francisco. And so I came here with aspirations to work at one of the big tech companies, work at a startup in the city, and forming a nonprofit for the homeless was probably the last thing that I ever imagined doing. And I actually have this running joke that if you would have asked me to write down 100 companies that I would have started in college, not one of them would have been a nonprofit. So I came to San Francisco and moved into my first apartment in the Tenderloin neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who aren't familiar with San Francisco, the Tenderloin has anywhere from 25 to 30% of the homeless in San Francisco. And so I moved into my first apartment, and my view from my window every day was an encampment. And so in a really weird way, I was sort of a fly on the wall for a homeless encampment. Mm-hmm. And every day I would just see all the people that would perform outreach and how they interacted with other homeless individuals and people in the city. And it just was so moving that I figured there had to be a better way to approach this. And so I ended up developing what's called our 27-step journey. And I actually developed it on my mother's porch in the middle of the pandemic. And I guess I was just kind of bored one day and thought, let me give it a shot at solving homelessness. And so I wrote out those plans, and from there we formed our team in January, and we've just continued to grow and form smaller projects.
Well, so describe we. Who's involved in the project now?
Yeah, so when I say we, our organization is 100% volunteers. So even myself, which it hurts a little bit to say this, but I'm still effectively a volunteer. And we started in January of 2021 with about 10 interns. Mm-hmm. And we were just doing various small, documents just to try to move the ball forward. And then we ended up forming our board of directors in April of last year. And so now, as of January 2022, we will have about 60 interns this spring from various universities like Berkeley, USC, UCLA, all the way over to Duke and Northwestern. And then we still have our board of about 12 professionals who contribute anywhere from 7 to 10 hours per month with the organization.
Now, how the Makeshift Traveler is in the prototype phase. How did it come about? What was the idea? And thinking back to looking out your window, why is that backpack the first thing you're really concentrating on in terms of a deliverable?
Yeah, so when starting this, I was extremely naive in thinking, okay, I've got this 27-step journey. I think it's the best thing in the world. Let me just ask some of the wealthier people in San Francisco, get $50 million and we'll get off the ground. Obviously, that was not a reasonable approach. And so that's when we kind of, or I guess at the time it was just me, that's when I sort of looked at some smaller things that we could really get off the ground now and ways that we could get into the community and start building connections in a way that really hadn't been done before. And so we're going to be the first nonprofit to bring a product to market. I'm not sure in what region, but in San Francisco for sure. And so we've really prided ourselves on, we're ran by students, and we really want to provide the city with a new way of looking at how you can build connections with people who are homeless.
Well, how does the backpack build those connections?
Yeah, so one of the key components of our Makeshift Traveler is an informational brochure. Mm-hmm. And so the informational brochure relates to our 27-step journey because they both hold the same belief of centralizing the fragmented services that currently exist. So our informational brochure will list out various food programs, substance abuse and mental health programs, temporary shelter, events, and much more. So we're really trying to bring together all of the fragmented services. And through our Makeshift Traveler and our informational brochure, that's just one of the ways that we can achieve that.
Well, so do you, let's first talk about the functionality. You've got a solar cell on it. It has a battery. There are USB ports so you can charge devices, for instance. Do the homeless need USB devices? What's the reason for the design of the backpack as you have created it?
Yeah, so this is a really common question. Typically, when you think of aiding the homeless, you probably don't immediately think of, oh, they need solar panels, right? I don't think I've ever owned a solar panel. And so I know a lot of other people who run organizations in the city, and they have similar questions as well. And so the way that I break it down is there's been a trend during the pandemic where people who are experiencing homelessness are actually using restaurants and small businesses to charge their cell phones, which, by the way, UCSF estimates that about 70% of people who are homeless actually have smartphones. And so they use these smartphones as ways to stay in connection with their family. People who are addicted to substances use these as communication methods to obtain those substances. So phones are a really important aspect to homelessness, particularly in San Francisco. And so through our solar panel, as far as charging a phone, we're able to alleviate that challenge for small businesses and restaurants.
So are they incented then to help you get those the backpacks into the hands of the homeless in order to create more space, for instance, for their customers? What's their motivation?
Yeah, so the motivation for the small businesses, of course, would be to get involved with this project and alleviate that challenge. And that's actually not an outlet that we've really considered. So definitely we'll make a mark of that. And the other way that we have looked at the solar panel is charging things like the radio and the flashlight that will be included in the Makeshift Traveler. And so take the radio, for example. We've included a radio. While this could be used functionally and to get news, to get weather, things like that, it's also a form of entertainment. Mm-hmm. And we've tried to design the Makeshift Traveler to not just merely encompass just functionality and trying to move individuals off the streets. We've tried to create it as a way to be entertained and a way to ease some of those smaller challenges. And so,
some of that just being connected to what the rest of society is important to keeping people oriented towards the rest of society. But now the question would be, I think a lot of people might be thinking, well, what if they don't want to be? And what is the utility of the Makeshift Traveler that just is absolutely essential to survival?
Yeah. The easiest answer to that is that none of it is an immediate necessity. Uh-huh. And where we really value the Makeshift Traveler for our organization is we have a saying that this is not the solution, mm-hmm. but it's a part of ours. And so utilizing the Makeshift Traveler as a way to, whether it be our organization or an organization that has programs that are up and running, as a way to connect them through the Makeshift Traveler. Okay. And so in the city right now, there are hundreds of nonprofits, tons of government-provided programs. And so outreach for all these nonprofits and programs can be extremely overwhelming. And so I've communicated with tens of hundreds of people who are homeless, and they have become almost immune to this outreach. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because programs there's really two main avenues of support. There's the temporary aid, which usually lasts a few weeks. And then there is the subsidized housing that can last for years. And so I actually have neighbors in my building who are part of this program, and I've talked to them about this program. And so if an individual is experiencing homelessness as being unhoused and sleeping in a tent or on the sidewalk, they are less likely to be open to these different forms of outreach just because there's so many and they're so frequent. And so what we are trying to pride ourselves on as positioning ourselves as different, and that we aren't just trying to get into your ear and bring you into our program so that we can just claim another number as a part of our program. We're really trying to build connections.
Okay. Now, what is the Makeshift Traveler made of? It's made of recycled material. Where are you sourcing it? And let's talk a little about the cost of getting this into the hands of the person on the street.
Definitely, yeah. So we're in an interesting time with the development of our Makeshift Traveler. So we're weighing a few different options of manufacturing it. A few of which are overseas, a few of which are in Ohio and California. And so the one thing that we have prided ourselves on is making sure that we use recycled material. Mm-hmm. And all four of our potential manufacturers use this as one of their main materials. And so it really just comes down to how quick we want to get these into the hands of people without compromising quality or without significantly increasing our costs. Mm-hmm. So right now we're estimating that per unit landed will be anywhere from $100 to $130 per bag, including all of the components. So even the included sleeping bag, first aid kit, mm-hmm. All those things will be included in that cost.
Now, how are you going to grow the HomeMore project?
Yeah, so we've been growing a lot, and we've been growing through building out our internship program, building out our board. And we recognize that if we want to accomplish everything that we set out to do initially, we will eventually have to bring on some full-time people, including myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the main leaps that we have to make in.
Well, does that depend on you raising money from a philanthropy organization, or are you looking for individual donors, for instance?
Yeah, so as far as philanthropic backing, there's really two main avenues for how we intend to fund the organization. So in a 6-week period from November to December of last year, we raised roughly $50,000 through friends and family of people within the organization. And so this will cover the tooling and manufacturing costs, as well as, depending on the first manufacturer we choose, the first 300 to 500 units.
Mm-hmm.
An important thing I want to note here is, let's say you donate $100 to our organization, and you can pick one of two locations for us to allocate the money. The first is our Makeshift Traveler, and the second is our 27-step journey.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick our Makeshift Traveler, estimating that per unit will be about 100, you'll be providing an individual experiencing homelessness with a backpack that has tons of short-term aid, as well as a connection to either our organization or someone else.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick the latter for our 27-step journey, your $100, just being frank, will likely collect dust in an account for 3+ years, just to be allocated to like some tile or a fridge. And so it's far less exciting and impactful. And so how we've designed our philanthropic backing for the organization is the first avenue of everyday people who want to donate $100 or less,
mm-hmm.
and be involved at the ground level. And we accomplish this through our Makeshift Traveler. Then we have funding our 27-step journey, which will likely require extensive government assistance, and if not from the government, funding from an extremely wealthy individual or corporation. So it's really two completely different realms of funding for us.
So how can somebody make a donation today if they're interested in getting a Makeshift Traveler into somebody's hands?
Yeah, so you can donate at the HomeMoreProject.org. We have everything laid out on there, all the information about the Makeshift Traveler. And because we're at such an interesting phase of bringing this to market, we have updates almost daily. So we're constantly updating our website with the most up-to-date rendering, or most up-to-date manufacturing, estimated delivery dates. So constantly updating there.
So I want to turn the page a bit here and talk about how we help people move off the street, and additionally potentially engage the homeless in addressing our lack of sustainability. And San Francisco is a very progressive and forward-leaning city in terms of its efforts to be sustainable, but is not a very sustainable city. And I'm a former resident. I lived there a very long time ago, and I remember even back in the 1990s and late 80s that there were folks, particularly older Asian women, who would go around and pick bottles out of recycling bins and then take them. They would get on a bus, and I've heard from friends this is still going on, right across town to Hunter's Point, which is really the roughest neighborhood in the city, to sell those bottles to get the deposit funds and then go home. And that would be how they would augment, or perhaps that was their entire income. And this is the hard question. A lot of other societies, Brazil and China notably, have recovery rates of valuable materials of above 90%. And it's because they have a trash picking class, which I do not want us to establish here in the United States. But potentially could the Makeshift Traveler be a basis for organizing a small army of people to go out and start to recycle the stuff that everybody else is just leaving on the streets?
Yeah, so I would say, Mitch, the short answer is yes, of course. And I think the real question is how we can help these individuals realize the sort of short-term and long-term implications of trash picking.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And so you're exactly right. The the elderly women are still doing this, and I see them, and it will be like a Saturday at 9 a.m. I'll go get groceries, and they're out picking. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen a more committed employee, I guess, or individual.
Well, but that's your short-term, long-term thing. Is on the one hand, you want to enable people to begin to engage in earning an income in such a way that they can make choices beyond living on the street. Right. On the other, you don't want them to be trapped in a job where their job is picking trash. And so how would you roll that potentially into your thinking about the 27 steps? So, because your process includes bringing people in, getting them some health assessments, mental health assessments, and so forth, then connecting them with services, healthcare, a residence, and subsidized residence. Have you thought about how to use the connection you're going to offer through the Makeshift Traveler to individuals to help them identify better opportunities and the ability to take the initial investment in work and turn it into a living, which might be bigger? Because the thing is, if you look at Brazil, for instance, there are families, multi-generational families, who have grown up and built businesses on picking trash from the landfills that everybody else is. They're essentially, society leaves it to them to sort the recycling. Right. Is that even an acceptable concept in the United States?
Yeah, so I think let's break it down to the most fundamental truths of trash picking. So let's take the elderly woman, for example.
Sure.
Right. They are essentially investing in trash picking. So they are going through the trash cans, and they understand there's a high probability that they'll find glass or cans that can be turned into cash, mm-hmm. and that can be allocated towards basic necessities.
Right.
If someone is homeless, they are essentially, because they do trash pick, and I have a joke that trash day is the worst day in the city, because for a 3 to 4 hour period before it all gets picked up, they just get flipped. Yeah. And the interesting thing with this example is, if you are homeless and you're trash picking, the only thing that distinguishes you from the elderly lady is that you're eliminating the step of recycling the good, mm-hmm. and you're accepting a lower quality good. So you may find your dinner in the trash, whereas the elderly lady may recycle the cans to get cash to pay for her dinner.
Okay. So really the difference here that we're talking about is being left with the leftovers versus monetizing the waste.
Exactly.
And so morally, how would you assist somebody moving from finding dinner in the trash, which is just, not the way to find dinner,
right,
to getting them to think about organizing themselves and maybe even their friends to pick up enough material that they made $100. And that actually is not as much material as people think it might be.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that. But what I will say is, and I've said this since I moved to the city, mm-hmm. is that I think the close proximity of attempted solutions for San Francisco is the real reason why we've not been able to have that elevated success in the homeless realm. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by this is that, take, for example, where I live in the Tenderloin. Mm-hmm. Roughly 30% of the homeless live here. And the Tenderloin is also, by the way, where most of the temporary housing units are located, substance abuse and mental health programs. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense, right? We want these individuals to have close proximity to those services that they so greatly need. Mm-hmm. But the challenge with this is that, say someone is utilizing fentanyl, and they're severely addicted to fentanyl, and they walk into one of those substance abuse programs, get care, and they leave out of there and they're immediately ambushed by all of their fentanyl dealers because they are located in these areas. And so the challenge with this is that, in my opinion, we have to completely remove individuals from this environment. And I think I think it's great for the environment, it works in other countries. If we are going to tend some of our efforts towards repositioning how we value trash, I think it's too close to home. And I think we really have to reimagine a new way of approaching homelessness. And that's exactly what our 27-step journey embodies.
Well, how long do you think it will be before you can realize the beginning of that long journey for a person? And what can our listeners do to help?
Yeah, so as far as helping with our 27-step journey, obviously funding our Makeshift Traveler will put us on a roadmap to getting there. As far as helping with our 27-step journey, we currently have two main teams that are focused on our master plans for this. And so we have what is now roughly a 150-page doc encompassing all the logistics, policies, and cost projections to really present this to the city and people who are interested in backing this. And so we plan on publishing this by the summer, and we'll have a more consumable version as well. But if people are interested in just sharing their thoughts about it, and I've built this organization with people who are not experts in this industry, and so we are all in a interesting way. We're all naive in this, and we're approaching this from a completely different perspective. And so we're very open for other insight into what we're doing. And you can send me an email and say, "Hey, Zac, this is really dumb." And
well, hey, what is your email address? Share your email address.
Yeah, so it's just Zac Clark at HomeMoreProject.org. So
great. Well, Zac, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with us about it. Look, I think what you just described, that we're all at the beginning and don't know what we're doing, describes the entire society's response to the climate crisis that we face, that we really are at the cusp of reinventing society in a variety of interesting, potentially very positive ways. We can't leave people behind, and I'm glad you're working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch.
We've been talking with Zac Clark. He's the founder of the HomeMore Project. That's at thehomemoreproject.org. All one word, thehomemoreproject.org. Folks, what we were talking about at the near the end of the conversation really is important to understand, that in the era of specialized solutions and expertise, we have to cross domains to start thinking about how to create new connections to reorganize society in both a sustainable and a just way. And so it's really great to see young people working on projects like this. This is Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. We hope you'll share this podcast and all the others that we do, as well as any other relevant information that you find out on the web, in your own conversations with your friends, family, and your community. We'll be back soon with another interview. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.